Um, it's 5 a.m. here, and I just woke up, read the news, and I was expecting to make a video today about how the United States and Ukraine have signed a deal where things are going back to the way they were. The Americans are just going to get some rare earth minerals, and in exchange, Ukraine is going to get a lot of American supports. They're going to get a lot of weapons in order to continue fighting while the negotiations are taking place. A couple of days ago, Trump even said that he's going to take Mariupol for Ukraine, like he's going to try to get that. And then I open the internet and I see what appears to be like the world's worst internet blood sports. I could just expect that at any second, Trump would say, Skullfuck47, thank you for the $10. Let's read the super chat. Zelenskyy, what were your 5 favorite moments when you were an actor? Like, that was it. It was like an internet argument between political commentators of different factions. And so the diplomat from Ukraine, she placed her hand to cover her face as she was seeing what's happening. We're going to wait for more people to join the chat, and then we're going to analyze the whole event. This, in my opinion, is the worst diplomatic shit show that I have ever experienced in my entire life. I think it's actually a diplomatic shit show of historical proportions. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. But this is on camera, it's recorded, so like even 100 years from now, people will probably, historians, not the average Joe, but historians are going to look at this video and they're going to analyze it. It's especially like if the conflict becomes worse, because from what I've seen, and this is my take, of course, but Trump has met with Macron, he has met with Keir Starmer, he has met with Zelenskyy, and out of the 4 people, only one wants peace. Everyone else wants accelerationism. And I never said this on my channel, not once, at least not in the last 5 years, I think. I never said that this can lead to World War III, like I never did a Tim Pool. But I generally think that the ways things are going, like the geopolitics, the way things are happening in the world, I genuinely think that, yeah, like there is a possibility that in the future we will have World War III. And I don't know what else to say. It's a scary thought when you realize it, but like listening to the rhetoric of the world leaders, it seems that a lot of them actually desire this. And yeah, I don't think it's good. Especially like if the United States doesn't get involved, right? Like if they just stay neutral and then they choose the winning side, like that would be a scary thought. The reason I say this is also due to Germany's ambitions, right? So like Germany and the UK especially, they really want the military. Like they want the European military. And Germany wants to do the funding, right? So for those of you who don't remember history, Germany was told not to have a military after World War I, but they decided to violate the agreement and did what anyway. And so after World War II, they were also told not to have a military, and they don't up until now, right? And so they're saying, no, it's not going to be our military. We're just going to fund it. Like, we're just going to pay for it. But the reality is, every single person is loyal to who they get paid by, right? And so, like, you look at NATO today, right? Like, the Americans are the ones funding it. And so, like, if the Americans say, like, do this or we stop funding, then other nations immediately have to do that. And it is quite concerning because, yeah, I do think that Germany and the United Kingdom, they're trying to take advantage of the situation in order to justify why we should build a European army. If you're like a person in Brussels, like a bureaucrat, an European army sounds like a good thing because you get to project power and you get... But the reality is that we have the long peace. We have no conflict in Europe after World War II because the Europeans didn't have an army. Before World War II, there were a lot of conflicts in Europe, and Germany was the one that was holding the cards, right? Like the Holy Roman Empire had a massive army, and they were like the continental police, if you will. After that, the Nazis had a strong military force, and they could also force other nations to broker deals. Like, for instance, they forced Romania without invading to give Transylvania to Hungary, to give Moldavia to the Russians. And so, I think like they want to go back to that. I think that they genuinely want an army, and this is what it's about. We'll see what happens. It is extremely concerning because things were just looking like they're going to die down. It looked like, okay, well, Trump is in office and he's going to force people to come to the table. Zelenskyy is going to sign the deal. There's going to be Americans mining in Ukraine, so now they have a vested interest to protect it. Now they can tell the American taxpayer, like, we are in Ukraine because we are mining stuff there and it's very profitable for us and blah, blah, blah. Right? But now it seems that is off the table, at least for the time being. We're going to look at the whole interaction and then we're going to comment on it. Hey V, hope all is good. I saw the whole Zelenskyy and Trump and Vance meeting, and to me it felt like some political drama, but Zelenskyy, you need to shut the fuck up and take the deal. The money trade is over. We're going to discuss what happened. I think like this is the way that politics were done up till now. But a lot of people don't catch up that the culture has shifted. Like we're in a new culture. Things are being done differently. You can't do politics the way that they were done previously. I'm sorry, V, you don't want to border Russia, but 25% of my paycheck goes to the government, and I don't want other countries to jerk us around like they have all the cards. You gotta kiss the ring. To be fair, Romania has kissed America's ring consistently, and I am a person that advocates for Romania to keep kissing America's ring, because, and this is historical in nature, like throughout history, when you're a little country like Romania, you can't think like you're Germany or like you're France, you can't even think like you're Poland, right? Like you're not a regional power. And so you need protection, like you need allies. In the real world, you don't really get allies. Like you get to be a vassal. Being a vassal is not necessarily a bad thing. Like people who play Forex games, like you can have a prosperous nation, and you can still have independence while being a vassal. Like that's not necessarily like a bad thing if you're a small nation. America, and throughout history, like the Romanian nations have been a vassal to Poland. We've been a vassal to the Ottoman Empire. We've been a vassal to Russia. We've been a vassal to many places. And the ones that treated us, I think, the most fair were the Poles and the United States. Like the United States, like sometimes they do things that pisses you off. Like they try to replace a politician. They promote their culture, which sometimes is good, but other times it's like the Democrat values, They do try to meddle in your elections. They sometimes don't like the way things are going. Like, it's true, right? But, like, compared to what Germany does, compared to what Russia does, compared to what... actually, the Ottoman Empire wasn't really that bad either. But, like, historically speaking, America has been good to its allies. They try to defend their investments. That's how I see it. Like, if America invests in your country, they at least try to defend the investments. And so, I think that in order for Romania to maintain its geopolitical strategy is to actually be friends with the US. And this is why we actually did fulfill our NATO obligations. We paid as much as was needed. This is why whatever... Like, there was a scandal with a US soldier that drove over a person. Like, he committed manslaughter, right? Like, vehicle manslaughter. I don't think he wanted to, but he was drunk, drove, and killed someone, right? And so the American embassy demanded that this soldier doesn't spend a single day in a Romanian prison. Which, in my opinion, is the wrong thing to say. Like if a Romanian would have done this in another country, I don't care who he is, like, no, just get punished, right? Like, if you travel to another country and murder someone, whether you want to or not, no, get punished. And the Americans didn't want that, right? So, like, the Romanian government obliged. The Romanian government obliged with the Tate brothers. Like, recently, the Andrew Tates, right? Like, they were still under investigation. What happened is that the prosecutors were incompetent and they didn't do the file properly. So the judges went like, can you actually make a file so we can have a lawsuit? Like, can you do your job so we can go to trial? And they were still under investigation, but the American government, well, Donald Trump said, give the Tate brothers back, and they did. Like, so far, Romania has consistently followed whatever policy the US stated because we have interest in being defended against Russia. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know. But it looks concerning. I'm not going to lie. It is what it is. When you're a small nation, you don't get to decide. It's what the major powers want. That's what's going to happen. Zelenskyy did not off himself. No, I don't think that that's going to happen. Although in Eastern Europe there have been cases with, also in Ukraine. Yeah, like wasn't that guy in Ukraine that was getting poisoned? I forgot his name. But there was like another Ukrainian president that found out he's getting poisoned. So he had to go to a Western hospital in order to treat himself. I forgot the name of the guy, but like this was more than 10 years ago. Hey, why are you living in the USA? Don't tell me you are gay. Well, it depends where you live in the USA. I was referring to Ukraine kissing the ring, not Romania. Zelenskyy is used to a lot of neolib language like our democracy. He's behind the culture. The problem with Ukraine is that I understand their point of view. Like I'm not against what they are doing. Like put yourself in Zelensky's shoes, right? And I'll say this about Zelenskyy: like he didn't run. Like you have the Russian army invading your country, right? And they're taking Crimea, and so you're like, oh shit. Is anyone in the West going to do anything about it, right? Because like Ukraine did have a deal back in the day, and the deal was that after the fall of the Soviet Union, Ukraine became, I think it was actually the second largest nuclear power in the world, because most of the nukes from the Soviet Union were actually in bases in Ukraine. So like they technically had nukes. They were a nuclear power. But the United States and Russia signed a treaty with Ukraine and said if you denuclearize, we're the ones that were going to guarantee your territorial integrity. Take into account that after the fall of the Soviet bloc, like no one knew what would happen. I mean, even Romania has territory claims in Ukraine, right? So like they were not just worried about the Russians. They were worried that anyone in the New World Order can get an idea and try to invade them. And they're still a young nation that's upstarting, and they didn't know like the military that they will have. And so they were like, okay, well, we're going to get rid of our nukes. Also because like nuclear weapons require a lot of money to maintain. They're not cheap. And so they were like, okay, we're going to get rid of our nukes, but you guys, you defend our territorial integrity. And so Russia came in and took Crimea. And when they asked for help, there were sanctions that were given. But nothing, nothing that was actually substantial, because the initial sanctions were on paper only. In reality, everyone was business as usual. Russia was claiming they're not the ones invading, it's just little green men. And this is why Ukraine wants to join NATO, right? Because it's afraid of Russia. They already took part of their countries. And it's like, okay, but what if they want to take more? And so this is when they tried to join NATO. And this is like, everyone knows what happened afterwards. But the main issue is that if you're from the point of view of Ukraine, right? Like you're looking at Poland and you're noticing how wealthy the nation is. You're noticing how prosperous Poland is. And then you're looking at Russia. Now Russia is prosperous if you're looking at the big cities, right? Like if you're looking at Moscow, if you're looking at some of the other major cities, which is what, Tucker Carlson is showing. It's like, oh, look how beautiful the metro is. Look how beautiful, right? But if you look at the countryside, people still shit in the pivy. Like in the countryside, people don't have sewage in some places. They don't have electricity in others. Like Russia is really poor. There's like huge income disparity. And so the Ukrainians are like looking at Poland, and they don't care about like liberal values. And it's like, no, they want to put food on the table. A lot of Americans don't understand what it's like to be unable to pay the electricity bills or to be unable to pay for food, right? And so, like, this is what the Ukrainians care. They don't care about, liberal, they consider liberal issues to be first world problems. The transgender debate, LGBT stuff, it's like, okay, yeah, we'll deal with that. But we don't want to starve, right? And so when the Russians came, they were like, what are you wanting to do? Like, we want to liberate you from the West. It's like, you want to do what now? And so they decided to fight. And, Zelenskyy didn't run. And he actually did stay. and they managed to withhold for like 2 weeks or so, and then the West got involved. The Russians didn't expect the Ukrainians to have resistance, and the West went like, okay, well, don't sign a peace deal because we're going to defend you. Now, from the perspective of Ukraine, the reason that they wouldn't want to sign a peace deal is like, okay, we'll sign a peace deal now. What's the guarantee that 10 years from now Russia isn't going to attack again? Right? Like that's the point of view that they're having. It's like, sure, like we can have a ceasefire. We can have peace. But how do we know that 5 years from now they're not going to try another Crimea? Like what exactly is the guarantee? And there isn't any, right? So like they decided to sign with the Democrats and they decided to sign with the Western powers. And to the hopes that, okay, well, if we beat the living shit out of Russia, that's the guarantee. Like they're not going to try again if they try once and they lose. And so they decided to go along with it. But America is a democratic nation, and you have like Trump now in the White House, and he's like, no more. You know, like it's not in our interest to keep fighting. Now I think Trump actually did try to tell his base, like, look, okay, we now have an interest. We now have the interest of the rare earth minerals, and we're making a lot of money there. Like, it's our importance to protect it. Now, to be fair, the problem with the way that Zelenskyy does politics is that he doesn't know how to talk to the MAGA base. I can easily make an argument that it's a lot more persuasive. Like, I don't know how many MAGA people I would convince with why it's important to defend Ukraine, but I think like the argument itself would be stronger than, oh, it's the right thing to do, and oh, because Russia invade. Like, no one in MAGA cares, right? Like the MAGAs are like, well, George Washington, the Ottomans are invading, and Washington are like, why is that our problem, you know? No, the way that you can make the argument for the MAGA base is that it's not why it's important to defend Ukraine, but it's like, what does Ukraine mean for your enemy, right? Like, what does Ukraine mean for your competitors? And so if Russia actually would take Ukraine, which I do think they want, they would become a nation that's incredibly powerful. Like, Ukraine is a nation the size of Germany. It can have a powerful economy if you invest in it. It's got fertile lands, it's got fertile grounds, right? And then Russia being the only supplier, being the main supplier of gas into Europe, can then set European policy, right? And they don't even have to do that. They only have to bribe Germany, get Germany to have the gas, and then they can tell Germany, this is how you're going to vote, this is what you're going to do, or we rise the price of gas, we shut down the gas, etc., etc. And so, like, it would threaten America's hegemony. Now, a lot of people don't understand why the American hegemony is important, but it's tied to your way of life. If America stops being the world hegemony, you know how Trump now uses tariffs, and it's like, if you fuck with us, you get tariffs. Well, you can get in a situation where you're not the one tariffing, you're the one getting the tariffeur. And so you can have, like, other nations putting tariffs on you, raising prices in your country. You can become Canada, basically. Probably worse, though, because Canada is still defended by the US. And so, like, this is how you would make the argument for the MAGA base on why Ukraine is important. Because you don't want Russia to get it, right? Like, it's not why Ukraine is important, but it's like what it means for your enemies to have it. And to be fair, like, a Russian with Ukraine and with China, like, that would actually become, like, the world superpower. Like, they would be able to dictate terms. They would be able to dominate the world just by paper without even sending armies. Anyway, every European country needs to have their own army. This is something that I agree. Yes, like every single European country should have a strong military, and the alliances should be regional, right? Like Romania would have a vested interest in having a strong military and collaborating with Poland. I don't think we can collaborate with Hungary because their external policy is a little bit different than ours, but I'm pretty sure we can collaborate with Bulgaria. I was referring to, okay, I read the super chat. Codex Ambrosius, V, I love your videos like a breath of fresh air in a smoke-ridden world. Dude, like, this is what the bots keep saying. Like, I got a couple of bots that comment on all my videos. When I come to Romania, I'll need a tour guide. I'll pay well. Well, thank you, say, Brav. I would probably give it for free. I don't need money for a tour guide. I'm a homesteader in Texas. Number one, car, only phone, internet, no TV. A lot of American people know what it's like to struggle to keep the lights on. Really? I mean, there's one thing like to know what it is to struggle from an American point of view. It's another one from an Eastern European point of view. The question is like how many of them actually have their utilities cut because they can't make payment, right? Like if that's the case, if you know people that had their electricity cut because they couldn't pay it, and then you know people that have debts, like huge debts, like let's say like $10,000 debt to an electric company, and they can't pay it. That's what it's like to struggle in Eastern Europe, right? Because when you have a debt, you can never have electricity again, possibly. Why? Because like you would have to first pay the debt, and the debt is usually so big that it can't be paid. So like you have actual houses without electricity. Zelenskyy is a stubborn mule. He's so cocky for someone with zero leverage. He campaigned for Kamala. He's used to go into the White House with bags of my tax. Yeah, well, we're going to look at that. So let's look at the internet blood sports that took place. Again, for those of you who just joined, my experience with today is that I woke up expecting to just read the articles on how Zelenskyy managed to sign the deal. It was supposed to be like a basic bitch thing, nothing controversial, and then business as usual. But instead, we got this spurgery.
Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a minute.
answer?
No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid
thank you.
president, $350 billion.
You
We
voted
gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about West
If
Indies?
you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me.
equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
Yeah, like again, the only thing that I would have expected was for Trump to now say, Skullfuck47, thank you for the $10 donations. Zelenskyy, what are your 2 favorite movies? You know, like it's literally like an internet blood sports thing. Now, just so you can understand how bad this went, I will just show you this, right? Like a picture is worth 1,000 words. Do you know who this lady is? Like, can you hazard a guess? Like, what do you think her profession is? Like, what do you think she's hired to do? She is the diplomat for Ukraine. Now, I'm not an expert in body language. You know, there's other YouTube channels that like go, the president now seems a little bit irritated. He's looking to the left. It means he's thinking of a lie. You know, like I'm not that expert in body language, but I think like from her position, things aren't going very well. I think she's not happy of what she is experiencing on stage. I don't think she. She's the ambassador, yes. She's the ambassador. And so, just so you can understand just how fucked this whole thing is, right? Because, like, a lot of people like to blame this on Trump. Now, this is one of the most influential neoconservatives that are in Washington. Not the most, but like, if I was to say like top 5, it would probably be Lindsey Graham, right? Like he is a neocon through and through. I think he went to Ukraine more than 10 times. He's really interested in defeating Russia. Like he's a war hawk. And when Lindsey Graham comes out and says complete and utter disaster, and I think he said something like either Zelenskyy has to change or he has to go. I do expect that Zelenskyy will be pressured to resign. I do think, like, this is my predicament. I don't know if I'm right or not. I guess we'll see in 3 months or so. But I have a feeling that he is going to be pressured to resign. Now I'll tell you what happened, right? Like from my point of view, I saw like some publications trying to suggest that this is Donald Trump's fault, that they cornered Zelenskyy, that they were basically trying to put him in a no-win situation where it's in front of the cameras. And, as a war president, he can't afford to look weak. He has to look strong. And basically, if he shut the fuck up, then it would have made him look bad in his country, so he could face impeachment. But if he actually tries to talk against Donald Trump, then he looks disrespectful, he looks ungrateful, and he's going to face impeachment because like he's jeopardizing Ukraine's relationship with a strong ally. So that's what I thought. No, like legitimately, I thought this is a political stunt because for whatever reason, Donald Trump wants to get rid of Zelenskyy, right? But then I watched the video, and that's not what I got. No, like the video was supposed to be Zelenskyy signing a pre-agreed contract, right? Like the Ukrainian team and the United States team, they already negotiated the contract. They already talked about and they ironed it out. And this was supposed to be more like symbolic, right? Like he goes there, signs the contract in front of the camera, shakes hands with the president. That's it. But what ends up happening is he tries to pressure Donald Trump into sending U.S. troops into Ukraine. And that's when the shit show happened. And then telling Trump that they stood alone against like that, that's when it all exploded. And so I don't think this was entrapment. No, I think like he's a bad diplomat. Now, the reason I think he's a bad diplomat, well, not necessarily a bad diplomat. So hold on, I'm framing it incorrectly. Because Zelenskyy has managed to get hundreds of billions of dollars for his nation. So like de facto, when you look at the things that he accomplished, well, he's not a bad diplomat, right? The problem is that he's a diplomat of the old ways. Like he does things the way they used to be done. And that's not how things are done anymore. Like the world has changed. So basically the way he used to do diplomacy up till now is that he would go to an event and he would start shaming world leaders. Like he would put shame on countries and he would be like, well, this country isn't paying enough. This country didn't do enough. Like you need to do more. And then he would go and say, this country is still doing business with Russia. This country is still trading with Russia. You need to sanction it. And so by doing this, it actually worked. Because the previous world order, if you will, the pre-Trump era, the neoliberal era, worked on reputation, on prestige, right? Like the European Union is a factory that kept producing prestige. So it doesn't really matter what economy you have. It doesn't really matter what military you have. It's like, how are you viewed by the world? You know, it's kind of like a girls' club. It's like, are you the top chick? Are you the lady that's the center of attention? Right? And everyone wants to be in everyone's good graces and everyone wants to talk nice. And so like you have a consensus and you're not allowed to go against the consensus. But now things are different. That's not how the world works now. Now you have the world powers. You have the Trump administration. You got Russia and you got China. And basically the way they do things is like, okay, what is the situation on the ground? How many soldiers do you have? How many soldiers did you kill? What is your economy? How much are you losing? How much are you gaining? Where's the money? Where's the audit? Can you show me like how... That is how they're talking. They don't give a fuck about who invaded. It's like, no, show me the battleground. All right, well, like, okay, they invaded. All right, can they reach Kiev? Are you able to hold them back? What is going on? How many soldiers did you lose? Do you need more soldiers? Why aren't you recruiting people that are on the age of 18? That's the conversation now. They don't give a fuck. It's like, oh yeah, but like they invaded. It's like, yeah, sure, they did. Right, can you hold them back now? Do you have the military capabilities of holding them back? What do you need from us? What do you want? What do we get in return? And so if you don't understand that this is the way that the conversation is moving forward, you can't do diplomacy. It doesn't mean you have to accept it. It doesn't mean you have to like it. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it. But you gotta understand that it is. It exists. Like this is the new way of reality. This is the way that the world works now. For the next foreseeable future, right? Like, this is not how it worked up until now. Up until now is like, oh, well, they invaded. Okay, well, we need to do everything in order to help you win. It's like, oh, that doesn't matter. Just more aid, right? Like, that's how it worked up until now. But now it's different. Now it's basically what's in it for us. Yeah, we agreed to help, right? We didn't say how much we're going to help. What are you giving us in return, right? And so the thing that I noticed Zelensky doing, and this is what he was accused, is that the first time the mineral project, the mineral contract was to be signed, he agreed to it. Like, this is what Trump said, and I didn't believe him the first time, by the way, because a lot of things that politicians say, you know, especially about closed door meetings and stuff, like, they frame it in a way in order for them to look good, and who's going to disagree with them, right? Like, usually I don't believe someone that says something that can't be debunked. Like, if Trump says that Zelensky farted during a meeting, how can you know? How can you debunk it, right? Like, even if Zelensky comes up and says, no, I didn't fart, like, no one will believe him, right? So usually when politicians are saying stuff that's happening behind closed doors, I tend to be very skeptical. I'm like, well, So basically the first time around, Trump said that, well, the reason he's upset with Zelensky is because they had the contract, they had an agreement, they met, and they were saying that this is how things are going forward, right? Like, they were saying, like, everyone is going to sign it, everything is great. And then Zelensky went to other world leaders and did the politics that would work in neoliberalist worldview. And they tried to shame America, saying that Trump is being informed by the Russians and he's suffering from Russia propaganda and blah, blah, blah. Which, again, these were talking points that would have worked in 2022. They don't work now. Like, now no one believes it. It's like, what do you mean, like, Trump is under Russian propaganda? Like, the United States is one of the most powerful nations on earth. They have one of the most powerful secret services and CIA agencies and, you know, like the three letters agencies and all that. Like, to say that the America has less intelligence agencies than other nations is ridiculous. Like, no, obviously, like, the US president is very well informed about the situation on the ground, especially when Ukraine is collaborating with the Pentagon on most of its military operations. So, like, no, the idea that, like, Trump just doesn't know is beyond ridiculous. And so, him doing this upset the relations with the United States. But, you know, I was like, okay, well, it worked because now he's getting a better deal. Like, initially, the original draft was that the US is taking all the resources. Now the second draft was that, no, Ukraine is going to take, I think it was like a 50-50 split. I may be wrong. But basically, like, okay, the Americans are extracting resources and they're also paying Ukrainians a part. And so that was like a better deal. And he goes to the White House and then he does in public what he was accused of doing in private, trying to change the deal in the last moment. It's like, oh, we want US troops. Yeah. This is not how you do politics anymore. It just isn't. Now, if he would have gone to the United States and said, we are breaking a deal with China, and it's like, okay, well, maybe that's something that Donald Trump would have listened. We're talking about an alliance with Russia, and we're going to supply Russia with blah, 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 and get Russian investment. Maybe then, you know, like, the Trump administration would have been persuaded. But, like, when you're going, it's like, give us stuff, like, Zelensky gambled campaigning for his sugar daddy Biden and lost. Now he refuses to deal. So fuck around and found out with the consequences of his gamble. V thought on the secession of the Republican SPRSKA. I have no idea. I haven't followed it. I don't like talking about shit that I don't follow. Like, I would have to get a little bit more involved. But just to talk out of my ass, I don't know. Just personalize Trump, Zelensky. Say you lost your job and your wife got cancer. That a friend paid your bills and got your wife the best medical care for 3 years. Would you act like Zelensky did then? To be fair, this is something that's not really discussed, but most of the help that was promised to Ukraine didn't actually go to Ukraine. I think it's like 10% of what the Americans promised actually reached Ukraine. There was like a lot of grifting going on. There are articles in the press that say that very little actually reached Ukraine. Most of the help that Ukraine got was from the Europeans, but the problem is, like, they're running out of military, from what I understand. The other part is that Russia itself is also suffering. Like, if Russia wasn't suffering economically, they wouldn't even try to go to the negotiation table. If Russia was actually strong economically, they would have said, no, fuck that shit. We're taking Kiev and you can fuck off, right? But they're not doing that. And so, like, both nations are actually, like nations that have been in a war. And the thing that America did, which is actually benefiting Ukraine a lot, is the sanctions. Right? Like, if the sanctions are lifted, if Visa and MasterCard starts doing business with Russia again, it's going to be incredibly difficult for Ukraine. And for Europe to actually continue this conflict. The Tonight Show featuring V, sponsored by Pfizer. Oh my goodness. Russia is a paper tiger. If Russia was a paper tiger, why are forces, European forces in Moscow right now? See, like, the thing that you need to understand is that in every conflict throughout human history, every single one, is a fog of war during the conflict. Like, while the conflict is happening, no one knows, right? So, like, in World War II, that was the same thing people thought. It's like Russia is a paper tiger. They couldn't even beat the Nordic countries. Germany is going to win every day. And the people in Berlin literally believe that they're winning up until they realize that the Red Army is entering their nation. That's the power of propaganda. And so, like, you really can't tell what's on the ground. Like, how many soldiers died, how many vehicles have been destroyed. You can't know. But the thing you can know is how the leaders react. And so if Putin actually wants to go to the negotiation table and is interested in cutting a deal, well, then it means that they have suffered something. I don't know what they suffered. Maybe they suffered economically, maybe they suffered politically, maybe it's the cost of human lives. But, like, the very fact that he's not saying, no, like, we're going to take Kiev, fuck off, means that, well, he doesn't think he can do it, or he thinks that it may be a Pyrrhic victory, or that it's not worth it. And that's basically how I try to assess the situation. I don't really care about what's written, what people say, because if you go on YouTube, right, you have videos going, it's like, the green t-shirt has once again displayed incompetence by deciding to invade Russia. My friends, haha, why would you ever do something so stupid? It seems that Ukraine can't have a single competent general there because the green t-shirt gets involved himself into making sure that no one can challenge his power. And so all of this is done for propaganda. And then you look to another video and it's like, let's analyze why in the future the West is going to invade Russia. We are going to witness a military alliance of epic proportions started by Germany, creating an army unlike the world has ever seen, and then deciding to go without the Americans and invade Moscow and arrest Putin. Like, seriously, you're looking at it's almost like it's the same event, but the interpretations of the event are so fucking wild. We would invent a profession to keep political leaders from making mistakes due to language barriers. Well, we already have AI. The fact that Russia did not just roll over Ukraine shows that Russia is not that big of a wolf that people thought. Well, hold on a little bit. Like, what you're saying is, like, the fact that America didn't just roll over Vietnam, right? Or the fact that America didn't just roll over South Korea, or the fact that America didn't just roll over the Middle East. Russia is not just fighting Ukraine. They're fighting a proxy war with NATO. Like, they're fighting against another nation that has the same military as them. Some of them are even better equipped. Like, NATO gear in a lot of situations are better than Russia. And they haven't mobilized their entire nation. Like, they're not actually waging a total war. They're not deciding to glass the other country to the ground, right? The reason they're doing this is not of kindness and compassion, by the way. Like, I'm not saying that they're showing restraint because they care about the cost of human lives. Like, I'm pretty sure that if they declared war on Poland, the war would have been done incredibly different than it's being done now. No, they're doing it because they want to govern Ukraine. They want either a puppet government over there to turn it into a Belarus, or they want to have their own people installed. I don't know. But the reality is that they are fighting NATO pretty much. The only thing they're not fighting is, like, getting more soldiers from NATO. But if that were to happen, then, well, Russia would mobilize even more troops. I wouldn't say that NATO lost, right? Because even NATO didn't decide to go all in. Like, we didn't actually send military, because, like, if you have Germany and France and the United Kingdom and Poland all sending their own militaries, well, then the conflict would look pretty much different. The thing that if you look at it, like if the war were to stop now, neither side would have won much. Russia wouldn't be able to take Kiev, which was their objective. Ukraine would manage to hold most of its territory. The cost of human lives on the Russian side would be pretty significant. And the Americans taking the rare earth minerals from Ukraine would also be consistent. And so, like, no one would win besides the Americans if peace was done now. Russia is hurting, but if Iran can survive, then Russia can. At the moment, the only reason for fighting is terms of ceasefire or end to this war. Yeah, I agree. The thing, like, a lot of people don't know, it's like, okay, well, what would the ceasefire mean? Like, what is the guarantee? Well, it would probably be similar to what North Korea and South Korea did, right? Like, what is the guarantee that North Korea wouldn't attack South Korea again? Well, the guarantee is the demilitarized zone. Like, you have a massive border where there's, like, cannons and artillery pointed to the other side. It's mined to living hell. And that's what I get, you know, like fortifications and defensive, like a marginal line. The problem, though, is that Ukraine is quite big. And to have to fortify so much land, it's very difficult. And so, yeah, a ceasefire doesn't necessarily guarantee that the conflict wouldn't happen, but still, you have a chance to keep defending yourself. And not to mention, like, I heard certain European leaders flirting with the idea of giving nukes to Ukraine. But, I mean, they would basically restart the position where Ukraine did have nukes in the beginning, so... Where is Putin? Why do we not see Putin in a room with Trump? Didn't they schedule a meeting, actually? I mean, this is normal, by the way, when it's an important conflict like this. You usually have first the administration, like in this case, Rubio with the foreign minister from Russia, like talking things out, discussing things. And then you have the leaders meeting. Because it's no point to have the leaders meeting and not knowing what the talking points are, what each other's position is for negotiation, right? And so the reason that you don't have Putin and Trump yet is because it's too early. But I'm pretty sure like in 1 or 2 months, they are going to meet. I feel that if things got really bad for Russia, then the other BRICS nation may get involved. Take into account that usually neutral nations, and this is like throughout most of wars, you have nations that remain neutral up until like they think one side has a significant advantage, and that's when they enter, right? Or they can enter out of desperation. So like for instance, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor because of desperation. America joined World War I when they saw one side significantly gaining an advantage over the other. And you know, like joining is like fabricating a cause belli, or like there's this event which happened and blah, 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 and it upsets us. You know, a ship was sunk, the sinking of, what was it, Louisiana, was it? Huh? And then you go to war. And you try to go to war on the side of the victor so that you speed up the victory. Good diplomats, they know when to do it, right? Because if you do it too late, then you don't get a seat at the negotiation table. And in fact, the allies may not want you there. And if you do it too early, you may lose, right? So like too early, and you have like the tide of war turning. And then... BRICS is financial, not military. Well, tell that about the European Union. India will not fight for anyone else. They got their own issues. Again, they like, I would expect that these nations would wait until they would see who's winning, right? So like if Russia is dominating, they could join on behalf of Russia. Not necessarily with boots on the ground, but like sending military, boosting their economy, sending aid packages. Or if the European Union is winning, then India can also try to help the EU. And so, like, this is normal for most conflicts since World War One. Superpower by 2025. Can you imagine Brazilians fighting in Ukraine? That wouldn't be abnormal in a modern warfare. I mean, if you look at the Spanish Civil War back in the day, well, you had people from all over the world fighting there. Like the Spanish Civil War, if I'm not mistaken, happened before World War II, right? And you had people from all nationalities, from different continents. All of them went there in order to fight, usually as mercenaries and stuff. But yeah, no, like, it wouldn't be weird to see Brazilians fighting in Ukraine, or people from any other nationality for that matter. It's financial, not military, until it starts affecting their financial militaries. Well, the thing with BRICS is that there's no strong uniting ideology, right? So I've seen these nations basically contradicting each other and not working in unison. The thing is, when you make an alliance, it's only as strong as you can back on your promises or stand strong on your threats, right? So, like with European Union, there's a lot of threats. Like if you try to leave or you don't do the things that Brussels tells you, you get sanctions, you get fines, you basically get politically ostracized, right? Poland and Hungary had to pay a lot of fines because they didn't want to take refugees. And so, like, it's the threat that keeps the alliance together. But in other places with BRICS, like, there is no threat, right? Like, there's no fines, there's no sanctions, there's nothing. And so countries like India can do whatever they want. And then you have, like, other nations, it's like, okay, it's BRICS. Does South Africa actually mean anything? You know, from geopolitical strategy, I mean, right? Like, are they a powerhouse? Like, if South Africa tells something that they're going to put tariffs on the European Union, like, is the European Union going to get impressed? If South Africa said, now, we're going to help the European Union with Ukraine, would anyone care? Right? It's like some of these nations are just added there for the purpose of being added. And then you have, like, Russia and China, which, you know, often disagrees and have, like, competing political interests. People really hated each other in the Spanish Civil War, one of the bloodiest wars in Europe. That's correct, yes. And many nations would send people there for two reasons. Like, number one, because they wanted to be on the side of the victor, because then they could work better with that government. But secondly, because they would get military training, right? So, like, one of the things that matter a lot in war is having veterans, like people who know how to fight, people who understand how to fight. Morale is very important. And so if Europe was to fight Russia now, well, what would happen is initially there would be significant losses on Europe's side. Why? Because both Ukraine and Russia have been at war for a while, and they know what battle is like. And so they would be able to hold out better. They would be able to be a lot resist under fire and pressure a lot better than the new guys. And this is like what also happened with the United States when they went in the Middle East. Like when Japan came in to help, the American soldiers were terrified of the Japanese more than the enemy, because the Japanese would often do certain mistakes that would get people killed. This is what happened in Ukraine with the North Koreans. Like, the North Koreans got Russians killed. And it's what happens when you don't have veterans, when you don't have fighting units that have experience, that know what combat is like. And so a lot of nations were sending their troops in Spain to get that combat experience. And that's why you had, like, nations from all over the world, like, just sending fighters into Spain. I think 1996 Ukraine border is unrealistic. I see Ukraine drama as a way to get Europe involved and not prepared to fight Syria, not wait for USA. Well, if you look at Europe, see, this is actually an interesting thing. If you look at Europe, every nation was at some point part of another nation. Every nation has territorial claims with other nations. And so there's, like, two things you can do. Either agree with the status quo, and be like, okay, well, after the Cold War, these are the borders, these are how things will go, and just accept that. Or you can have constant warfare, because Romania actually got in a scandal recently because Georgescu pointed out that we have territorial claims in Ukraine. Hungary has territorial claims in Romania. Russia has territorial claims with Moldavia. Like almost every single nation has territorial claims, right? I'm pretty sure that Russia also has territorial claims with Poland. Like I don't know their policy with that, but I wouldn't be surprised. And so, like, if you don't say, okay, these are the borders and this is what's going to be enforced, then the only other solution is constant war between nations. Like, you get another war, right? Like, there's no this argument that like 100 years ago my people were on your land. It's like, okay, but what are you gonna do about it? Like, do you want war? And if you want war, like, take into account that your own neighbors and your own people within your borders may also want to secede because they have their own territorial claims. No, I'm aware that Ukraine literally means border. I know the history of it. But again, I'm telling you that almost every single nation in Europe has territorial claims with other nations. And so, like, if you want peace, you just gotta accept how things are. It's like, this is how things are now. Just leave them the way they are. Otherwise, there's going to be just constant conflicts and wars. And by the way, like, for the average person, like, this is another thing. Like, for the average person, it doesn't really matter that much. Like, for instance, let's say there is a World War III, right? And we managed to beat Russia. Well, my life isn't going to improve. Right? It's going to stay the same. Now, let's say that Russia does manage to conquer. Like, what would that mean? Right? Like, Russia manages to conquer Germany. I assume, like, more of the same. I don't know. I'm just like, what would that look like? Okay, they install a puppet government in the EU. Okay, well, up until now, what is the EU doing? Like, pushing environmentalist policies that lower my lifestyle. All right, well, what would that look like? What would it be different? Again, these are scenarios that, like, for the average person doesn't really matter. But, like, if you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, like a more wealthy individual, like, these scenarios may actually impact you. As morbid as it is, Ukraine is building the meta for modern war. It's the first war where both sides have night vision, thermal scopes, drones, etc. My God, it's horrible, man. I'm actually looking at what modern war looks like, and it's World War I with drones, pretty much. So you dig a trench, and you stay in the trench for most of your time. Every time you go outside, you're afraid that a drone can spot you. The drone has, as you pointed out, night vision and infrared. Apparently, like, if you piss on the ground, like, that leaves a mark, so, like, they know that soldiers are there, so, like, you need to dig a hole and piss in the hole and then cover the hole. And then the drone warfare is completely removing the human aspect from war. Like, it's like a video game. To the point where you see a war crime that's being pushed on Twitter and with heavy metal music and people are cheering. Right? It actually does look like a video game. It's awful. I don't know why people are celebrating it. I think, like, people should see more of the carnage on social media so they know what they're actually trying to sign up for. The first war with satellites, GPS, and FPV videos. Well, think about it this way, right? Imagine that they knock down your power cables. Like, you're just a civilian. You're not even in conflict. But they just knock down your power cables. Okay, your credit cards don't work. Your internet doesn't work. If it's the middle of winter, you don't have heating. You can't cook because the EU has encouraged people to have electric gas stoves and shit. You're pretty much fucked. Right? That wouldn't be a problem in World War II because the world was concentrated on like not relying on electricity. Like, they did have electricity, but it wasn't as important. Like, you could survive in a rural village without electricity. But now if you run out of electricity, especially in Eastern Europe, like, your heating is down. Think 1996 Ukraine border is unrealistic. I see Ukraine drama as a way to get Europe involved and to prepare to fight for Syria, not wait for USA. Yeah, I think like Germany is trying to make its own military, to be honest. I think they want to found a new army. It would be called an electric stove, yeah. Russia has more power from winning in Ukraine. Isn't the fact of bad for US? Russia can be an ally. Not really. Like historically speaking, Russia hasn't been a good ally. Like, why do you think Russia and China isn't getting along? Like, let me put it this way, right? How many nations does the United States get along with? Like how many people are happy to see Americans? And the answer is like a lot of people are happy to see Americans, right? Like if you're an American and you come to Eastern Europe, Jesus, like people will be so happy to see you, even if they don't know anything about you. Let's talk about Japan, right? Like Japan has a bad reputation in Asia, but outside of the world, like people like to see Japanese people. How many people are happy to see Russians? Like what other nations does Russia has good relationships with? It's like, oh, it's the Russians, yay. Why do you think that is? No, seriously, like why do you think that's the case? No, it's not American money. No, it's not American money. I will tell you what it is. It's American values. Like Americans genuinely have good values. Like the American people have certain values that are very appealing to other individuals. Like the concept of individual liberty, freedoms. Like this is appealing to anyone, regardless of what place in the world they are. Russia simply does not run around the world. That's false. Oh my goodness. I mean, they were a superpower at one point. In the Cold War, like Russia did run around the world. No, the reason is that their policies historically has been to fuck with their neighbors. Like again, you can see this by asking, why do countries want to join NATO? Do you think Mexico would want to join a Chinese alliance against the United States? Do you think Canada, even now, like the way Canada is treated, do you think they would join like a Russian-Chinese alliance against the US if they were offered? The reason that doesn't happen is because the United States has maintained really good relationships with your neighbors. Russia doesn't do that. I mean, the only way people like Russia is because they have interests. But like there aren't like people that are happy to see the Russians, you know? Maybe a couple of nations actually. Maybe Iran. But even that is probably like the elites. Yeah, no, like Russia has really bad PR at the world stage, and most of it is due to its historical grievances. Almost entirely. Like the other thing, like you can look during the Cold War, when a nation would embrace America, they would become prosperous. When a nation embraced communism, they would become poor. And it's not just that they become poor, but they get famines, they get power outages, they get fucked by the Soviet Union. And so like this seeded the plants of distrust all around the world. People don't understand how crazy strong the US military is. We fought in wars with 30-year-old technology and I want to keep up. As a Russian living in Florida, I agree, we are more alike. The countryside people of Russia and America can be friends. They like to fish and barbecue too. Don't get me wrong, like I don't have a problem with Russian people. I think like Russian people are really nice to hang around the party, and like every party becomes a lot better if you have a Russian person in it. The problem is when the Russian people get together and they form a government. That's the issue. Like the government is poisonous. Even the Russians don't like their fucking government. The US was rainbow Maoist too, but it's trying to fix itself. Well, Russia did go woke, right? So like Russia is what the US would look 40 years in the future if it actually went fully woke, if you kept voting for the Democrats. The most racist people I've ever met have all been not white. I think that's true, actually. No, I think that's a true statement. Russia could have taken all of Ukraine 20, 14 if they tried. I don't think they could though. I don't think they could because the parts that they took were parts that were already pro-Russia. This is one of the other reasons why Zelenskyy won elections. I like the idea that the CIA put Zelenskyy in power. Well, the CIA has tried to influence elections in other countries and lost. The reason it won in Ukraine is because the people that Russia took were already pro-Russian. And so when the elections came, you didn't have the people from Crimea voting, you didn't have the people from Donbass voting. And most of their supporters, most of their base voted differently. Both the USSR and Nazi Germany tried to make Mexico to side with them versus the US. We stood strong despite the US being a bad neighbor. I don't think you understand what a bad neighbor is. Like, again, I'm not saying that the US is a good neighbor for Mexico. But if you are neighboring Russia, you'd have definitely joined one side or the other. Russia is bad as the neighbor. China is like less bad. It's still bad as well. Germany is also bad. Poland is good as a neighbor, for instance. Like, Poland is actually a great nation to neighbor. No, like, the thing is, like, people like to judge from their point of view, right? So, like, from their lived experiences, well, you have a bad neighbor, it's the US, so therefore, US is objectively a bad neighbor. I would rather neighbor the US than to neighbor something like, not necessarily even, like North Korea, right? Like, North Korea would be an awful neighbor. To be fair, the United States isn't subverting Mexico as much as I would expect. Like, that's interesting, right? Like, the United States could subvert the living shit out of Mexico. But for some reason, it doesn't. If Mexico was invaded, we would go in and free them. I think so too, yeah. I think like if China was to invade Mexico, I think the US would go in. Ukraine laughs at Romania. Well, this is like just Eastern European politics. Like, everyone laughs at everyone. Like, hold on, let me show you European politics for Americans to understand. I think I have like the perfect video that can sum it up. Okay, this is like right here. This sums up European politics. This is why I laugh when America talks about white people as like a monolith, because this is how it's in Europe.
Good morning, my neighbors! Hey, fuck you! Yes! Yes! Fuck you!
Right? Like, that's not just a meme. That's not a joke. That's like European politics. Like, ask anyone from Eastern Europe and they will tell you it's literally like that. Anyway, right. I'll end it here because my baby is going to wake up in a little bit and I want to feed him before my wife gets up. Oh, you could barely hear it? It's good morning, my neighbor. And from the other part, it's like, fuck you. And the other guy is like, yes, fuck you too. That's European politics. Right. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.